Welcome. We are a mother-daughter podcast about all things surrogacy. Together, we have brought 8 beautiful babies into this world, and we would like to share through education and knowledge about surrogacy with those who want to educate themselves on the topic. This is Stop.Sit.Surrogate. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen.
Hey, everyone.
We are joined today by a repeat guest, and we all loved her. So, would you like to introduce yourself for those who are new?
Sure. Hi, my name is Lesa Slaughter, and thank you again for having me here. I'm an attorney specializing in third-party reproduction, which is egg donation, surrogacy, gestational surrogacy, and other forms of third-party assisted reproduction. And I'm an intended parent myself. I now have twins through gestational surrogacy that are 14 years of age. So there we go.
Did I know that? I must
You
have known.
did.
Okay.
You did.
It's the old brain. I just turned a crazy decade, and so it's
Well, hey, join the club. Welcome. We welcome you. We welcome you to this club.
Yikes.
So
Wow, both ends. That's cool. Okay.
yeah, so that's why I really want to get out there and educate intended parents. And I've got a book coming out this year, which I'll be back. It's kind of like the Intended Parents Guide to Surrogacy from an attorney who's been there.
Nice.
So that's a new thing that'll be coming out. But I wanted to talk about everything that's happened in the new laws coming up in 2025.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, I can launch right in, which is
Please do, 'cause
main
there's so
question I'm getting email blasts from agencies and from clients, from intended parents who live outside the United States, is this executive order that Trump signed, which on the 20th, which deals with the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which is birthright citizenship, the concept that if you're born in the United States, regardless of the nationality of your parents, if you're born on U.S. soil, you are automatically a U.S. citizen. Well, that executive order that Trump signed essentially says, well, wait, I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I want to change that. So unless the parents unless the parents are U.S. citizens, which I'm simplifying a bit, the child will not be a U.S. citizen. So that means for surrogacy, that's a significant potential impact because intended parents coming over to pick up their child or for the birth of their child through surrogacy are typically here on a tourist visa or some other kind of visa that is temporary, doesn't grant them U.S. citizenship.
Right.
So the question becomes, well, how does that child get citizenship from some country in order to be able to enter into the home parents' country? Right. So literally, you could potentially have kids without a country. And we've seen this before, actually, with France. That's been a bit of an ongoing battle, and The Hague has finally stepped in dealing with children who are born through surrogacy in the United States. So this is pretty significant and likely an unintended consequence of what the original executive order was trying to get at, which was an immigration issue. So we're watching that right now. The status is there's an injunction. There have been lawsuits all over the place by various interest groups and individuals saying, hey, you can't really do this. This was signed in 1868, this amendment. It's been around for a long time. It's a fundamental right. It's not a right that grows from other amendments or other parts of the Bill of Rights. So I'm not a psychic attorney, but I like to think I am sometimes, and I really think this is going to go through the court system and won't stand constitutional muster. That's been the opinion of several of the judges who it's been in front of. There is an injunction, which means that it's stopped, it's halted, it's not applicable until it goes through the court system. Right. But that's certainly been a major concern of intended parents or clients of mine from Europe and Israel and South America and all over the place coming into the United States because they're having and expanding their family through gestational surrogacy. So any questions on that, please, definitely ask. But that's been a big change that's been of concern to a lot of people, as you can imagine.
So, but it's not because they did put a pause on it, right? Until I don't even know. Is there like a date when it's getting picked back up? Is that announced?
Well, no, that hasn't been announced. What'll happen is it'll go through the court system and judges and possibly even the Supreme Court will decide, hey, you know what? This is unconstitutional. It won't apply.
Do you think that'll
Okay.
happen?
I really do.
You
I
do?
really
Okay.
do, based on reading the opinions of the judges thus far and the
Yeah.
basis of the injunction,
Okay, good.
and what's being said about it, of course, by legal scholars, but which are important to follow. But what's persuasive and going to be dispositive is, of course, what the judgment of the judges say when
Right.
they write their opinions. I really do. I think it's going to create just a bit of a nightmare. I think there's also a possibility um, that even if it were to go, there could be particular carve outs and ways around that. Nobody wants to go through that. I mean, surrogacy is a big part of how families are created these days, and we're seeing more and more employers like Google or what have you,
Mhm.
and even benefit companies like Carrots uh, offer benefits to employees that will help finance and put some money towards surrogacy and egg donation. We've never seen that before. We've seen
Yeah.
it with adoption, but that's now coming out and really such a big wave and such a big part of employee benefits to attract and retain key employees.
Agreed. Agreed.
Amazing.
And then he just, our president just signed the expansion of IVF benefits. Like, so to me, it's like this double-edged sword. He does that, but then he's doing this
I hear mixed things on that though.
take away birthright. I know. I
Okay.
just think he's all over the place. We're not here to talk about his political stuff, but it's very, very confusing. And I'm sure making a panic for intended parents.
It is for
Has
foreign,
to.
but that's again, this is where that actually is a great segue into Colorado's new law, which was effective as of January 2025, because the unintended effect and impact is a chilling to a certain extent, right? Of everybody, when there's uncertainty in the law in most industries, people stop, right? We
Right.
saw the same thing with Alabama and the wrongful death of the embryo case. And we saw IVF clinics posting things on their websites about what they weren't going to do. So,
Right.
but Colorado, for example, Colorado now has a law essentially banning anonymous egg donation. So, what that means is that, and I'll give you the specific name of it, is um, the it takes away the anonymity of sperm and egg donors. The interest of someone conceived for a donor is now part of the consideration in egg donation. So this is a new, uh, and Colorado's on the cutting edge of this. And we saw this before with adoption. Remember, adoptions used to be completely closed.
Mhm.
You could never get any information. And over the years, we've seen societal viewpoints on that change and say, well, wait a minute, medical information and genetic history and family history and ethnic history is important to the child. So the child's consideration should be a part of the process of looking at the confidentiality of the donor. So, what it says right now, and we'll see, it'd be interesting to talk to some of the Colorado agencies. It puts a lot more burden on them to
Mhm.
maintain those records and keep the records updated of egg donors. So essentially what happens is when the child turns 18, or if they're emancipated beforehand, the egg donor has to agree that she will allow her identification, who she is, her identity, to be known to the child for the purposes of soliciting medical information from the donor. So, and the donor agencies are due to collect and maintain all those records and update them every 3 years. And if a recipient refuses to do that, or not a recipient, I'm sorry, an egg donor refuses to allow her identity to be disclosed to the child, again, if the child asks
Okay.
at the time of 18 years of age, or if they're emancipated earlier, then the donor, under Colorado law, the agency is not allowed to match that donor with intended parents or an intended parent. So that's become a real
Wow.
trend and process, right? And we're seeing how that societal change with adoption and disclosures is now morphing into egg donation. So
Does that law, Lisa, it has to be at the age of 18, or if they waited till they were 19? Like, what's the statute behind the agencies keeping all this information? Maybe the child at the age of 30 goes, oh, I want to know now. Like,
again, that's unintended consequences of how you're going to administer and adhere
yeah,
to the regulations if you're an agency. Exactly.
geez.
So that's going to be played out. This is the first year that it's enacted, right?
Okay.
That we're seeing it happen. And I think it would be interesting. I didn't get a chance to talk to any Colorado agencies before the show, but that was something I would like to know. How are you putting this in place?
Right.
What are you doing when the donor is the child is 25, right? I
Right.
mean, is it after 18? You don't have the requirement. A more complicated case is a child who has a genetic issue and the donor's passed away,
Oh,
right? I mean, what
yeah.
kind of access to information do you get from someone who's deceased but yet has a genetic, may hold the genetic key to your health or cure?
Yeah.
So those are kind of issues
Wow.
that exactly, this is why I love this area of the law. It's
Ooh,
fascinating and it's always changing, right?
yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of that change. I have a feeling we'll probably see other states change that too, and
Hmm.
allowing for that.
Do,
And
do you think egg donation's gonna decrease? Like, some
well,
people,
I think it's potentially chilling to
yeah.
people wanting to ladies wanting to donate eggs, but alternatively, I mean, frankly, with facial recognition,
Hmm.
it's an issue. Identity is an issue, and donors are typically young women doing this to help pay for school,
Right, right,
help pay for other expenses.
right,
They don't know where they're going to be in 20, 18 years, 25 years. So
right.
to have a child come knock on the door and say, hey,
Hmm.
now, alternatively, typically, and again, I'm not a psychologist, but children of egg donation typically are not that curious about the egg donor in terms of wanting to go meet them. We
Okay.
see that with sperm donor, with children who are recipients of sperm and single parents.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
But with egg donors, it exists, and some children do want to meet the egg donor, but
Oh,
that's less and less. So
okay.
this is really for health records and how that's going to how they're going to track that and
Wow.
how they're going to do that. And it'll be interesting to see statistically, and we won't know this for 18 to 20 years,
Right,
how many children actually avail themselves of the donor contact, right?
right.
Because it's starting this year and you've got to wait 18 years until
The first one.
until they're
Yeah,
there. Now,
yeah.
most egg donor contracts already have something similar to this in their contract, right? When we draft a egg donation contract, it says, look, they do genetic testing. IVF doctors do genetic testing, but of course, they don't test for everything. It would be prohibitively expensive. Plus, there are certain things we can't genetically test for today that in 5 years we might be able to,
Mm.
or in 10 years we might be able to. So the contracts that I draft say, in the event that there is a genetic issue or something that could be attributable to genetics that could not be known at the time of this contract, the donor is willing to undergo certain tests and
Yeah.
certain testing. Doesn't mean they have to give bone marrow or a kidney, right, if they're a match, but will undergo additional testing to see if there is a genetic disease that she may carry that may have been passed on to the child. Here's where that comes up a lot is the BRCA gene. Some parents test for the BRCA gene, some parents don't. Some IVF doctors recommend it, some IVF doctors don't. So in the future, maybe the testing for the BRCA gene becomes simpler and mandatory, just like you check for spina bifida, right?
Mm.
Very common, very easy test to do. So we'll see what happens with that. For example, if the child or the parent for the child under 18 decides to undergo genetic testing and says, oh, okay, the child carries the BRCA gene, then that intended parent has the obligation to pass that on to the donor, right? So that's important for the donor to know. So it's reciprocal. So if the donor finds out something, they're supposed to let it, again, and it's through an agency. Typically, it's the agency or the IVF clinic or both. So where that information is exchanged. So that's going to be important. And the other thing we're seeing, again, a little bit of the Wild West when it comes to egg donation, which is so much a part of our same-sex community for gestational surrogacy, is the 23andMe and the genetic ancestry, right? Because and how parents are going to communicate with their children that they were created using an egg donor.
Mhm.
Because all of a sudden, you're in eighth grade, you do a 23andMe, grandma gives you a genetic test or your friend does and says, hey, and you find out, wow, I have a relative, a direct relative that I've never heard of. Hey, mom, dad, who is this? Who is this person?
Yikes.
Right?
Right.
So we're seeing all this information evolve, and we're also seeing some of the stigma with egg donation being taken away, slowly leaving. So that's one big element that's happening. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the U.S. With this, and we're watching this to see how this will impact contracts directly, and more so in more states.
Crazy.
That's a very wild one.
I'm just thinking of the storage of all of that and how to go and recoup it. Like get it. Somebody's asking about it, and what if you give the wrong information on the wrong? Like the checks and balances that are going to have to go into play for that. Like my head is just going. There's going to be like a whole department in each
Well,
agency just for that.
Well, not only that, that's a really good point. I think agencies will have to possibly increase their price because they're now becoming data
Right.
storage and
Right.
it's sensitive and confidential information. I'm sure it
Mhm.
deals also some with health information, I would imagine.
Right.
So yeah, that is a separate and complete
Whew.
different. Now, the question is if your retrieval takes place in California, but your donor lives in Colorado, does this apply?
Where is it?
Or is this apply if the agency that's matching you is in Colorado, but let's say the donor is in California?
Mm,
So some of those issues haven't been really flushed out.
Okay.
So we're going to see again, it's unintended consequences,
Right.
right?
Right.
and and impacts that really aren't foreseen and frequently because this industry isn't at the table when making some of these laws, right?
Right.
So better representation would be great too to let them know, hey, practically here's what that's going to look like and may not get to the spirit of what you're intending for the law.
Right.
right. Exactly.
Right.
That's an interesting one. But
Agreed.
right now, only Colorado's the one the Colorado's the first.
Yes, Colorado is the first.
Okay.
So the other thing that I'm seeing come up a lot is and we've probably heard of some of them, is agencies that are taking off with intended fly-by-night agencies that are taking off with intended parents' money
Yes.
and leaving them, oh yeah, leaving them really
Right.
destitute. California's got a great law that says, hey, any money for the surrogate needs to go into an escrow
Escrow.
account,
Right.
right? But not all agencies do that. Not all intended parents know that. And
Right.
Illinois has just introduced a bill that says, hey, we want to create a fund to help reimburse some of these intended parents who've been taken advantage
Oh,
of.
good. That's sweet.
Yes. So, and the other big thing is of course the Pope's ban on
Okay.
surrogacy, right? Now,
Yeah.
he doesn't have the legal ability to ban surrogacy, but he's obviously extremely persuasive,
Yeah.
both politically and socially.
Yeah.
So I used to have tons of Italians coming to the US for surrogacy. So the issue is always going to be you can certainly still do it. I mean, you can't as an IVF physician when I spoke in Italy last, you could not solicit or mention IVF. That was not allowed. But people do come. The drive to have a child is very strong, and people will do it in any way that they can.
Right.
And so we'll see what kind of chilling effect that will have.
Yeah.
So no repercussions could come to an Italian couple or intended parent if they chose to come to the US and do surrogacy. It's just that the Pope is saying he bans it in the faith or in
Uh,
the Catholic faith
no,
or
I would say that you run a risk of being charged criminally.
really
Yes, that's
in Italy.
essentially yes,
In
that's
okay.
essentially what he has said, and lawmakers will
Shoot.
listen to that.
'Cause
Wow.
Didn't he, isn't something illegal? I thought if you were a gay man in Italy, Am I wrong on this? There was just something that was just passed in Italy where I thought gay men couldn't like they couldn't do surrogacy. They couldn't am I wrong?
Well, it was much more liberal about 15 years ago, and I had a lot of same-sex couples from Italy, but Italy has gotten much more conservative. And it's really interesting to me because I don't understand why the Pope doesn't look at Mary. She had an immaculate IVF. Okay, she was a gestational surrogate for Jesus. So
Yep.
I'm really kind of confused,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
eliminates the big guy there,
Mhm.
if you're Catholic. So
Right.
I don't know that anybody sat down with him and said, "Hey, how do you
Right.
reconcile no surrogacy and the birth of Jesus as an immaculate conception?"
Wow.
He's a older folk. He's not gonna
Yes,
Ah,
probably
yes.
not gonna get on that track.
no.
No. So as you can see, surrogacy laws are not static.
Mhm.
They're changing quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, and more countries are opening up down in South America, actually. Colombia is allowing for surrogacy, Argentina is
Wow.
allowing for surrogacy. That's fairly new.
Hmm.
I think that will impact the American
Yeah.
market because it's going to be less expensive. Surrogacy
Yep.
in the US is
But will it
expensive.
be as safe?
Ah,
Well, again, I would say no,
Yeah,
because
right.
the laws are not proven. It's a
Right.
different societal process of justice in some of
Mhm.
these countries.
Yeah.
So no, I wouldn't suggest it. There have been just too many parents that I've known that've gone to other countries that allowed it.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, other countries that have
Mhm.
allowed it before. Thailand was a big, we all heard about, children being held up in Thailand and some of the issues in Thailand. And I mean, oh yeah, I mean there were people who had surrogates in the Ukraine when the Ukraine was being attacked
Right.
by Russia, right? The
Know
Ukraine
that.
was a big area for gestational surrogacy.
yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's when you don't have laws and a medical infrastructure, if you don't have laws that are really tried and true regarding surrogacy and parentage,
Mm.
Mhm.
when you have a court system that's a little more dicey in terms of what you're going to get, instead of, if you follow California law regarding your surrogacy contract, you're going to get a judgment of parentage, right? It's not going to be if the judge is in a good mood or a bad mood that day.
Right.
It's going to happen by law. That
Right.
may not be the same in a foreign country.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because we're also seeing a trend of, on the one hand, in Europe, kind of being more conservative about surrogacy, but in the US, Michigan just opened up and has a new surrogacy law. So Michigan now allows for surrogacy. So there's a
Wow.
process there that's codified and should be fairly simple. So there are a lot of agencies now recruiting out of Michigan because surrogates in California have become so expensive.
Yeah. Yep.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes,
But they get, the cost of living here is a lot more as well.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, right. When you look at it all, yeah, exactly. And, yes, and it's not to say that people still won't choose California surrogates because a lot of people in California are intended parents and they want to be local. So, but it's less cost effective. I'm realizing that as a surrogate myself.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it can be.
Hmm.
So places like Nevada and Arizona, we're seeing some in New Mexico, although that's a little different. We're seeing a lot in Georgia, Arkansas. So, in Tennessee,
Yeah.
Florida to a certain extent. I mean, I have attended parents that have surrogates in those areas, right? They're from the US and foreign, but they're having IVF in California because
Okay.
we've got that industry really started and
Yeah.
gestated, no pun intended, here, and has
Yeah.
grown, and it's some of the best. But we're seeing more clinics too, pop up in other areas, and a lot of clinics are being bought up by venture capital, which is kind of interesting too. I'm
Hmm.
very, very surprised about that. So we'll see how that flushes out.
Yeah.
So
Very interesting.
Whew.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
changes.
A lot
Lots.
of changes. The I haven't had time to read it today. Have you had time to read the new thing that Trump signed with this
No, the
IVF?
Ivy.
Yeah.
No, I have not had a
I
chance to
haven't
look at that, but
either.
that's a great idea, for me to come back and talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, because I don't know. I keep hearing mixed things. I'm like, whoa, people, hold on.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what's going on. I haven't read it.
No, I haven't dove into
Me
it
neither.
yet either.
Oh,
So,
goodness. It'll
Crazy.
be interesting.
You know,
That's
when I did this like what two decades plus ago, right? Literally, California was almost the only state. Everybody wanted a California surrogate, California surrogate, California surrogate. It was illegal in like 30 other states or 30, and now it's just is every single state allowing surrogacy, or are there just a couple left? Just
no, but there is probably, I'd have to check my chart, but
a
there is
handful?
a handful
Yeah.
of those who don't really have a mechanism to do it.
Okay.
They don't necessarily have a surrogacy statute, but they don't necessarily prohibit it. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, with surrogacy and parentage, you really want to make sure that the road is really clear,
Yeah.
that you're not going to get, well, I don't know if I need to file it in this county, I need to file it in that county, and I don't have just, you want to be able to know if I go here, I'm going to get my name on the birth certificate.
Right.
And not all states are like that, even if they don't prohibit surrogacy,
Right.
right? And
Right.
then some states like Arizona, who we have a lot of intended parents who have surrogates in Arizona, Arizona will recognize a California court order of parentage, right? That's under the full faith and credit clause. And there are other states like Virginia that will do that.
Okay.
So that's
Nice.
hopefully that's going to be the trend as well, is
Okay.
more courts and states honoring through the full faith and credit clause. Because otherwise, if I had a judgment in California against me, I would, like a creditor or something, I'd just hop over to Nevada and say, oh, okay, well, that judgment's no good here.
Right.
Right. That's why we
Okay.
have the full faith and credit clauses. So my driver's license is just as good in California as it is in Georgia. Right.
Right.
So let's do the same with parentage. And that's slowly starting to happen.
Okay.
interesting. That's very
So lots of
interesting.
fun stuff.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's only February.
I know more will happen, and we'll see if some of these other bills that are, we'll see what happens with Illinois and whether or not that goes forward. And we'll see also if there are more laws coming on the books. Unfortunately, the legislatures tend to be reactive.
Mm,
So when there's something bad that happens, they'll come in and put in a law that they think will address that, but it may also have some of those unintended consequences
right.
that weren't foreseen by the legislator. So, we'll see. IVF in general is predicted to be on the rise.
Mhm.
If you take a look at our demographics on people marrying older, uh, egg freezing, we'll see what happens with that. That technology has evolved. We'll see what kind of impact that has on surrogacy as well, um, as women get older and wait to start their family.
Right. Gosh.
So exciting stuff.
Yeah. That need lawyers for, yeah, to
Exactly.
Yeah.
for all of it.
Yes, that's why you want to have
Yeah.
somebody watching all this, right? It's
Wow,
really
yes.
important.
So I just popped in my head in Colorado with that new statute or new law, if someone does a surrogacy that's like private and independent and they're not going through an agency, and is that going to apply there too?
No, it
Okay.
wouldn't because it's not, if it's a gestational surrogacy, this is just
Okay.
for egg donation, right? So it would not apply to surrogacy
Okay.
because
Just to the
you're transferring embryos. So technically that would have that would have happened if you'd used an egg donor. That
right?
would have happened
The
when
first part.
during the
Okay. Okay.
process of creating those embryos.
Okay. Got
Exactly.
it. Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense. Whew.
Yes, good times.
I'm,
Exciting.
But it's
I'm
great. I mean, but like you said, like to have a lawyer that is
huge.
staying up to date and staying up to date in every, not just in
That's
your
it. Yeah.
state, but in all the states, because
Mhm.
once something passes in one state, it can easily be a domino effect that happens in others.
Exactly. And, some clients that say, hey, I'd like a surrogate in California, but it's too expensive. Okay, let's look at Michigan.
Mhm.
Ask your
Right.
agency to take a look at Michigan or some of the other states that are coming online or have gotten better procedures down,
Yeah.
right? So that's important too, to not just have the legal, but sometimes, where it's getting expensive, to have the economic options to understand that, okay, you don't have to go to California. If another state has a good process and
Right.
a legal process, then that's great. And more of us are getting licensed in more states as well.
Okay.
Which is Only
That's my
beneficial to everyone.
Yes, that's my fun thing for 2025 is getting into the other bars. A lot of states now will allow for reciprocity. So I don't necessarily have to take the full bar exam
Oh,
again,
good.
Yeah.
which was it
Whew,
was I passed it the first time, but it was 3 days of hell.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
for
sister's a
California.
lawyer and she went
Yep.
through the same
And
thing. So,
son-in-law, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Goodness. Oh my God. Is there, I mean, there's a lot. I know there's a lot that's coming down and there's more to continue, and I'm sure we'll have you back talking about talking about them and breaking it down for us. But is there any advice that you can give to those that are maybe a little on edge or fearful of like the unknown?
Well, that's surrogacy in general, isn't it? The fear of
Mhm.
the fear
Yeah.
of the unknown,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Both from
Yeah.
the surrogate's perspective and from the intended parents. There, in terms of the executive order trying to end birthright citizenship,
Right.
I'm very confident that that will be found unconstitutional.
Okay.
And even if it isn't, surrogacy lawyers like myself are already thinking of ways to get around that, to amend a birth certificate,
Yeah.
to possibly have the surrogate on it, or to have a
Mm.
special, well, and then
Yeah,
immediately
no.
Yeah.
amend the birth certificate,
Yeah.
right? That's a
Right.
possibility.
Yeah.
Mm.
There are other ways of special. We did this during COVID when they wouldn't let intended parents come into the country,
Right.
and we had a special circumstance that said, hey, they can come in because actually this child is, we want to get this child out of the healthcare system so that we can have the healthcare system be free. So there are ways to work around it, and we're looking at that. But in
Okay.
the interim, no, um, there's no need to be concerned for quite some time. The American court system is not exactly
Hmm.
the Daytona 500 when it comes to resolving things. It's going to take. I hope we have an answer by this time next year. Hopefully, it'll work its way through the courts and it'll be deemed definitively um, not constitutional, right? So if
Right.
you're born here, you become a US citizen. And we'll see. Colorado may go a year of this, and the agencies may come back and say, hey, this is so burdensome the way you have us do this, that there are other ways to do it. Would you consider these ways, right? So we're going to have, just as we've seen with laws with other things, once they start to be applied, they'll come back and tweak them if it really doesn't work, right? They'll come back, the legislator will look, and people will, the industry will tend to get together and attempt to lobby and say, hey, we really do need this change here in order to make this effective. We understand what you're saying, which is the rights of a child to future medical information
Right.
should be considered along and equal to the anonymity of the donor. And we, as the Colorado legislature, have decided that that anonymity ends for the donor. Her interest ends when that child turns 18. Right. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Agencies may work around it and recruit donors from other states
Yeah.
Mm.
and avoid Colorado. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Because not all children born through are gonna know that they're a donated embryo until
Exactly.
something like a 23andMe or an ancestry happens, and all these
Right.
questions start to come up. And
Mm.
then do they wait at 18, on their 18th birthday, they're starting to knock on a door, and it can get messy. I'm just speaking from being an adopted child who knew I was adopted and somebody found me. Like it blew me away, and therapy was needed. Like
Yes.
yeah. So
Yes, well, and you raise a really interesting point because I do a lot of embryo donations, and there have been embryos where the original couple
Mhm.
had genetic siblings, and maybe that embryo was created through egg donation.
Mhm.
So then those embryos are donated to another family. They may have two or three kids. I mean, how is that going to be tracked with the donor,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
If the embryo is created and you've got these genetic siblings. So it's quite fascinating to see what
It is.
happens with that.
It is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And clinics have to retain information as well, and they're typically
Okay.
pretty good about it. But people are young, they move around, it's hard to track them.
Hmm.
Well,
I
right, right.
still have
So,
I moved recently, and we still, for our office, and we still have subscriptions we've forgotten about. Oh, we got to change that address,
Right,
Right.
right?
right, right.
Yeah. That's gonna be there's a lot of challenges. I see the
Mm,
purpose in it all, and I
I
think
do.
that for health reasons, like BRCA and everything like that, like yeah, that's fantastic. Like those are things that people should
Need to know.
have access to,
Right.
but there are a lot of
But
what
are
about
you,
this and what about that? And we need to think about
and
this
once you
next
have
part.
your donor's information,
Yeah.
you're not going to stop at health. You're, you're not going to give them a
Well,
piece of paper and
maybe.
say, fill out my health and then give it back and be done. Oh no, there's too many doors that open on that one. What if they've got more what if she's got now new children? You're literally half siblings with them. Like
That's right.
it just, and while I believe in all of that, and I think it's wonderful and great that people get to know each other and all that stuff, egg donation for anonymous reasons is a thing, and it's been a thing for a while, and there's a reason, there's many reasons why they do it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And there are other avenues that say you wouldn't necessarily have to disclose the identity of the donor to require her to
Right.
provide medical information
That's what
Correct.
I was just thinking. Like I could find out like health
Yeah.
and things like that, like without, yeah,
without
like
knowing the identity.
Correct.
right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Correct. Right.
Exactly. So
Interesting.
we'll see what happens with this. I
Very
mean, we'll
interesting.
see
Yeah.
what Colorado ends up doing and
Yeah.
how it
Be
applies.
interesting. Yeah, it'll be
Because it just
interesting.
seems like it, the little, like you peel it back a little bit, it's Colorado, and then the whole banana's going to get opened, and everybody's going to do this, and require it. And I just think that egg donation's going to go down because a lot of people do it anonymously, and they do it for a reason, as I said.
I
Yeah.
would
Just,
agree. I think that's a very, very valid point.
yeah,
Very
Mhm.
valid point. And donors are really concerned. They
yeah.
may or may not tell their spouse they donated. They may or may not
Right.
tell their, who knows, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right.
know it's a little off topic, but when you agree to donate organs anonymously, they never put you in touch, usually, unless there's some extenuating factor or both parties agree. So you're
Oh,
donating organs, right? You're donating. I'm not saying to a family member, I'm just saying somebody passes away and their organs are donated. To me, it's almost the same thing. You're donating a part of yourself that you're just doing it for the good of mankind. You don't want all of what could
attention.
possibly come your way. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do a blood test and find out what type of history they have there and put that in the file, and there you go. But don't give away that it's a cord on me. Just don't give away. If they want to be anonymous, don't give away their
Well,
identity.
the other thing too is that kind of, I mean, when you donate an egg, you're giving up any and all rights to that
Yeah.
egg and that child.
Right.
But when you start to have interactions between the egg donor and the child, what does that open up
A can of
legally,
worms. Uh-huh. Yeah.
right?
It could be a
So,
great thing or it could be really negative. I mean, and who's to say which way it's going to go?
well, it's interesting because the same-sex couples, male same-sex couples that I've worked with quite a bit when it comes to egg donation, do want to know who the donor is, and donors are willing to do that because obviously the child's going, "Hey,
Yeah.
where did I come from?"
Right.
So
Right.
that's opened up the door societally. I think in the at the end of the day, you don't have sperm donors who are, and again, I'm being very, very general with this. You don't have the same shame about sperm donors as you do with egg donors, right? There is still a societal shame associated with being unable to have your own egg, right? To be unable to do that. So I think that hopefully, I mean, one of the benefits may come that, okay, that's okay, right? That's okay if you're not able to produce an egg or your eggs aren't young enough or something's wrong that you needed to seek a donor. That could be a beneficial unintended consequences. It helps erode that societal shame. But we'll see.
Yeah. Everything
So
is a we'll see.
So what are you hearing from surrogates? Are there concerns about laws changing, or what are you hearing on your end?
Well, I mean, with the birth certificate, like with the birthright citizenship, I haven't really heard. I would say it's not so much like surrogates are like, oh no, but surrogates are like, what does this mean for my IPs? Like, what does this mean for I'm pregnant, like, and the international couples, like, they're out there. Like, it's like I'm currently in a journey, like things like that. So it's more so of like what's going to happen when this baby is born. And I think that maybe like that is like the where does the baby go? Like,
Right.
ah, baby going home with me. Like, it's kind of like COVID flashbacks in a sense of like
Yes,
what are we doing?
right.
Um,
The uncertainty. Are you in the middle of a journey now yourself? You said?
Kind of. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, not kind of. I had a transfer in May, but it didn't take. But I'm still with my IM. We're figuring things out. But no, just I have friends in the middle of journeys, and so it's just you
Because
know,
if the
it's an
child
up
can't
in the
get a
air.
if the child can't get a birth certificate to get a passport to go home,
Right.
Well, a
hello?
child can get a birth certificate. That's not an issue.
Okay.
It'll say where they're born and the time and the parents. But the question becomes if the parents are an American citizenship under
Right.
the executive order, where do they get a passport, right?
To even
Right.
right, correct.
I mean,
Correct.
they need to go. Hopefully, hopefully there'd be a process through the consulate or a post-birth order or something, depending on the
Yeah.
country.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, but then th
Oh,
there's not a lot of other talk except for the thing that just popped up today where I see
IVF.
everybody, the agencies, lawyers, everybody's and surrogates and IPs talking about, and I'm like, what have I not read? Like,
Sounds like I'm this. It sounds like I'm in the
Yeah.
same boat. That's the next thing I'm going to do is Google
yeah,
that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm yeah, because it just happened, so I'm like, uh-oh, what now?
Got it on the news feed. I'm like, oh, there he is with this pen again, signing away. Okay, what are we doing now?
Yeah.
Oh, ay, ay,
Well,
ay.
well,
Mm,
it'll all get figured out because he doesn't the that part of government doesn't no part of government has surrogacy in its mind. It's surrogacy I feel like always just gets dragged through the mud accidentally with it. And it's like, "Oh, we weren't attacking you." Okay, you weren't, but like you did.
Yeah, unintended
unintentionally.
consequences. Yeah, because
Right.
surrogacy is regulated state by state,
Yeah.
Right.
not federally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Right, exactly. That's a great point. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, because it's very different from California versus Michigan or California versus New York. Like, so many different places are so different. So to have this one thing that's like federally, and it's like, okay.
It should be interesting to see what his order does say about the
Hmm.
IVF
Yeah,
because that is a federal
right.
versus state by state. And that's interesting. Huh.
Hmm.
we'll see. Hopefully, it's for the
Mhm.
expansion of it. I know he
Right.
was off and on and off and on, and it seems as though his position has been more inclusive of IVF.
Yes.
Hmm.
So
That's very tough on
hopefully,
it.
hopefully it'll expand that as part of health insurance and as part of the right to be a pathway to where you want to become a parent.
Exactly.
Right.
Gosh.
Hopefully it's
So,
helpful.
well, now your
Hmm.
viewership is on the cutting edge of what to watch for.
Yes, exactly. And you'll be back soon, I'm sure.
Yes, we'll pop in and do an update on the
Yeah.
IVF and see what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a breakdown of all that.
And if this birthright gets into the courts and if for some weird reason they say, yeah, like we're upholding, we're not knocking down.
Yeah, that'll be why that'll be the real Wild
Oh
West.
my God. Yeah.
Really? Oh,
Let's just
goodness.
hope our judicial system, as it's done before, goes through
Mhm.
the correct chain and things go. But when Roe v. Wade was knocked down, I just thought, what the heck is happening to our country? So I don't know. We're gonna see. We're gonna see.
Well, this is slightly different because there wasn't an amendment giving the right to terminate pregnancy, right?
Right.
Right.
That came out. This is now again, they're called amendments, which means they can be changed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
But this amendment is very specific and calls out citizenship, right?
Hmm.
Does.
So that's a little different in terms of what the court's going to look at. It's
Right.
very clear what the founders said and wanted to have done,
Right.
Thank God.
right? And it
Hmm.
does. It gives predictability, it gives certainty, there's a lot of benefits to knowing that
Yes.
process, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. Well, thanks for talking with us again, Lisa.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure.
Of
Always.
course, absolutely love it. Love to
Okay.
update you on the latest and greatest in surrogacy, from the scandals to the new laws.
Got it. I love it. I love it. And I remember last time we talked, we were talking about you starting a podcast.
I know. It's just been, it takes a lot of time to catch up to laws. And so, I
Wow.
don't know how you guys do a podcast. It's very, very intensive. It's a
It
lot of
is
work.
intensive. It
I-
is, but it's
All of it
fun.
goes to her. She does the majority of it. I am kudos to my daughter. Seriously, she's very good at this.
Well,
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a
yeah.
lot to do. But I've also was reading some statistics. Your podcast is in one of the top 5 or top 10 of surrogacy podcasts.
Yeah,
Oh, good for us.
we were number 2 for a while. I think we
Did
just
not know
got bumped
that.
to 3, but yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes, you
Yes.
did, Ellen. I text you these things.
I don't know. It's just again, it's my 60-year-old brain. Just I'm gonna blame it on that again. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There we
No,
go.
but our podcast wouldn't be what it is without the community.
Oh,
So
absolutely not.
we make
Yeah.
it for everybody else, and we have fun doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have a diversified list of guests too, and a diversified
Yes.
from different perspectives, from attorneys to intended
Mhm.
parents to surrogates to all kinds of stuff. And I think that's one of the big draws. I think
Yeah.
intended parents want to know, what is a surrogate really like?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Talk
Right.
about
Yeah.
a leap of faith. That's the biggest thing, is how do we know she's going to do what we think is in this contract? And it's like, it's very hard to be a surrogate. It is not easy. It's a
No,
big process. You have to be really committed to it.
we do.
And the incentive is to help, and to help their family as well by the compensation. But they're undertaking a massive risk. You
Mhm.
can die,
You can.
Yeah, no,
right?
Almost did.
the compensation conversation is always so funny, like haha to us, because it's just like when you break it down, especially if you're a first time surrogate, when you break it down, you're depending on where you live, you're basically making possibly minimum wage while you're a surrogate. And there are so many other risk factors in being pregnant than there is at like working at McDonald's. So it's just, it's but we do it because we want to do it, because we
Correct.
love it, because the end goal is what we want for
It's
other
usually a
people.
win-win, right? It's a
Yeah.
win-win for both sides. You're helping create a family and you're helping your own family,
Mhm.
Yeah,
however you
and
decide to
it's
use that money.
really rare that you hear of a surrogate gone rogue. I mean, we've heard of
Right.
agencies,
Right.
right? We've heard of things like that. Surrogacy is pretty well regulated in the states that have it, about
Yeah.
what the qualifications are. IVF doctors are, I mean, their statistics with the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, you can go and look at their live births and their transfers and their numbers. You can, they have statistics that they want to meet. They want to get good surrogates that are going to meet their qualifications medically, so they become pregnant
Right.
Yeah.
and their numbers go up, right? And the
Yep.
agency, I mean, so everybody's incentivized to get good, healthy surrogates who are
Yes.
going to be compliant.
Yeah.
Because the agencies, if the agency surrogates never get pregnant, well, why would I want to go with that agency and pay a fee,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
If the
Exactly.
surrogate doesn't get pregnant, why is she going to want to go through all this process?
Right.
It's not easy to travel. And if they've got young kids, and they probably have work themselves. And the IVF doctors go, I don't want a losing track record,
Right.
right? I'm not going to select and approve surrogates who aren't medically in the best possible position to get pregnant, right?
Agreed.
So yeah, it really is, when you look at, I mean, most people look at things, there is a transactional component to it, but it's incentivized to everybody's benefit,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
and
The
it
surrogate,
only feels transactional if you make it feel transactional. There's never that. It's not like it's not an exchange. It's not that kind of
no,
feeling.
it's not.
No.
It really isn't. It's like I say to intended parents, it's one of the most unique relationships you'll ever have.
Yep.
But really.
As you
It is.
apply for a job like parenting that you can never quit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so funny. You can't.
No, you can't quit.
Nope.
You signed up for life.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the latest and greatest on the legal front here, and we'll keep you posted as more things kind of burst on the scene. If anything happens immediately, that's a big change. I'll, of course, reach out to you and let you know, so you can let your viewership know.
Great.
Thank you so much,
so
Lisa.
much. Yeah.
Awesome.
Love talking to you.
Same here. Same
Yes.
here, guys.
Take care.
I'm excited for your book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Do you have a title? Do you have a title yet?
We don't have a title
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
We don't have a title yet. So we're still kind of playing around with that. So,
Okay.
but I'll let you know. I'll be holding it up and announcing it, so you can be one of the first podcasts to broadcast on it.
Heck
Perfect. We
yeah.
would love
Come on here
to.
and promote it. Yes.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Okay, ladies,
Thanks so much.
have a great night.
You too.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, my head's going nuts. It's just spinning. Like so much
Yeah.
information, really great information, but it
Yeah.
it just makes you think and be concerned.
I mean, I'm not like maybe I don't know, maybe because it's not like directly like it's
It's not.
affecting, but it's not like directly affecting. But it's yes, it's concerning. What I'm trying to say is that she seemed so calm and collected that
That's
I
right.
feel more at ease with like
Correct.
what's going on. So like I'm not that concerned yet.
Yeah, because the community of especially the lawyers and the attorneys that are
Yeah.
around this are keeping on it. They're keeping on it. They're
Yeah.
watching it. They're gonna watch it. And so as
Well,
long as you
yeah.
have some people like that behind this, and it's
Hmm.
not up to like the surrogates and the people that are in
Right.
the community to like watch it. Yes, we're watching it, but those are the people who have their finger on the pulse. And so
Yeah.
I'm gonna defer to them, and hopefully she had some positive things to say that she doesn't
No,
think
she
it's
did. Yeah. The weird one was the egg donation. Like
bizarre.
it may like I said, it makes perfect sense. I completely understanding having access to like health and things like that.
In quotes,
But
yes.
the
Yeah.
anonymous part, like why can't you do all that without like
Right.
why do you have to do all that with the identification? Like I feel like you could just
Right.
be like Jane Doe and then
Uh,
here's the stuff. Like I don't
right.
understand.
Right. Get a really complete health screening of that donor
Yeah.
and family history. Take blood tests or whatever tests you have to take to get if there's anything genetically that might pop up, and
Because
then put that in a storage and let the 18-year-old
Because
have it.
let's be real, if you really wanted to, like, technology is so advanced that if you really wanted to find out, like, if you were like an egg donor baby or a sperm baby, 23andMe, boom,
Mhm.
like there you go. Like, so I don't feel like the name really has to be in there because you could totally
Yeah.
become like an investigator yourself if you really
Yeah.
needed to. Just
Yeah.
get the hell, like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't
Mm.
know. My
It's
thoughts,
one to
whatever.
watch. It sure is, because I'm whew.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one that if it rolled out. I
Yeah.
don't, yeah, I don't.
In all states.
I
Yeah.
think California would do that.
I, I don't think so either, but
Yeah, I'm gonna say no to
weird things
California,
have
but
happened. Yeah. And I'm actually looking at it from the adoption standpoint. I'm really not looking and it, like mine was closed. I wasn't able to
yeah,
get any information until they found me. And
right.
that's freaky. So I see it from both sides. I really, really do. You just, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Wait and see.
yeah,
But
it's all a wait and see at this point. But for right now,
yeah.
everything's knock on wood.
So
Okay.
thank you, Lisa. That was very, very informative.
Thank
Whew.
you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you,
It
Lisa.
is. Can't wait for the book.
I
Seriously.
know.
Yeah. That'd be
I'm
lovely.
excited. I
Yeah.
know. Okay, well, if anybody has any questions or stories they would like to share, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Stop.Sit.Surrogate or at our email at Stop.Sit.Surrogate at gmail.com. And happy Surrogacy Awareness Month. Mom, I don't know if you know that March is Surrogacy Awareness Month.
Oh, yay! Happy Surrogacy
Yeah.
Awareness Month. I did see that online today, so yay. Woohoo!
Yes. So,
All right.
yay, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. It's been another edition of Stop, Sit, Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Thanks for listening. Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. Also, check out the link to our YouTube channel in the description. And be sure to also check out our children's book, My Mom Has Superpowers, sold on Amazon and Etsy.